Yeah, because we'll use Postman to test the API at the end of the day to ensure that our APIs are working. And we'll look at that. Okay, I think that's okay. Let's close everything here. That was for the previous project I was working on before we begin on a clean slate. Alright. Well, so I don't know what I'm doing here. Just give me a sec. Okay, so this marks our first encounter with the backend, because we've just been looking at the front end lately, and I hope you guys are going to also take time to improve on that, and learn some more. Going forward, I also think that that is not the end of the front end the front end class, because I realized also that along the way, majority of us had issues with a few things, either to do with understanding some bits of the React, and that actually boils down to maybe your lifting of your understanding of JavaScript to in the implementation of React components and whatnot, hooks. So maybe we in future will have just classes that focus on maybe React hooks, in depth you know discussion on React hooks, some and so on and so forth. Yeah, and then we might also have discussions that will just focus on the preprocessor. For that matter, we were looking at Tailwinds, right? So we have other CSS preprocessors that are in place that you might also want to use in future, or you might go to a place where they are being used. So not everyone will be using Tailwind. I don't know what this is, but it's okay. Okay, I started something, you can see it. Fine. So for today we look at REST for backend development. So today is just about backend, and I'll just note a few things here before backend. So we have and what we're looking at is API development. So API stands for application programming interface. Yeah. So what basically that is, you have one application here, and you want to ensure that this application is able to talk to another application. Yeah. So that is only possible through what you call an interface. Yeah, so there's an interface that enables this app to talk to this and this one to talk to this. It's just a way of exchanging information between the two applications. So there are different ways of designing APIs, and we look at those. So I'll just mention. So So you might have an application, maybe say a banking application here that processes payment, and then this one is just a client-facing application that displays all the products that are being sold. So you have products here, and then this banking application might be an M-Pesa application. So for you to connect this app, you need an interface, and that's what we call an API. But then these APIs are designed differently. So you have different ways. Number one way of defining APIs, can use what we call TRPC, and number two, we also currently have what we call gRPC. This I thought all people had joined. We were done with this. Okay. Yeah. So we have TRPC. We have gRPC. Right now, you must be wondering what are those. We also have what you call GraphQL, and we also have what we call we have the most common one that you will hear people talk about when talking about backend APIs. It's REST. And then the other day I came across what we call OData. Yeah, so so GraphQL is different from REST, and gRPC also is different. And then OData is just a way of talking collectively to different APIs. Yeah. So, but this is something that is something that came up recently. Not so many people are using OData to consume data, but it is something that you might also want to learn. But we also look at it. It's not implemented right now. It's not implemented across. Someone is just having a question or something. Oh, so okay. Esther cannot see the pen. It's okay. So that might be which color? Something like blue or white. So get.
I think red.
What? Green.
Red will be good, I guess.
Red. You like red?
No, it's visible, I guess.
Oh, okay. Or I can change the background to white. Okay. Yeah. So we had TRPC. We have gRPC. We have GraphQL, REST, and OData. So these are some of the things that you might want to know before you delve into APIs. But today what we'll be looking at is REST. We also have what we call SOAP. So you can use REST framework to do your APIs. You can also use what you call SOAP to do your APIs. And this one uses XML to transmit data. So these frameworks use different different ways of they transmit data differently. So for REST frameworks, they use JSON. Yeah. And then JSON stands for what? JavaScript object notation. XML, what markup language? Some I don't know, extensible markup language, something of this sort. And then we have GraphQL also uses JSON, but then its implementation is just different. But I'll briefly talk about it. So we are not going to have an in-depth discussion of it, just to mention. TRPC stands for TypeScript. Now that we worked on a React-based application, JavaScript-based app, or TypeScript-based app, you might also want to use a TypeScript-based RPC kind of API. So this one's just meant for TypeScript-based backend that is combined with the front end in a way. And this one stands for Google Remote Procedure Call. So these are APIs that you do using Remote Procedure Call, which is a component within the HTTP. So it's not something new. It's something that existed long time ago. Only that why it's not widely used is because of the current browsers don't really support these remote procedure calls out of the box, but it used to work back in the days. But it's been tweaked and improved, and you'll realize that it is very fast in terms of transmitting data compared to REST and GraphQL. It is quite used in mobile-based applications that talk to each other. So what this RPC and TRPC and gRPC do is they give you flexibility in terms of talking to different services. So you might be having some sort of API gateway, some here. So an API gateway is it's like an interface that controls different APIs, a collection of different services. So you might be having a service here written in Golang. You can have another service here written in Python. You can have another service here written in C++. Another one here written in maybe Java. So it gives you that flexibility to easily talk to different services. So you can use gRPC for that here. Yeah, the same thing. And then all these services, are being controlled by the API gateway somewhere here. And of course, at the end here, you have some REST. All of them are talking to some REST backend. Yeah. Yeah. So basically, that's what the gRPC can do. And TRPC, it makes it brings your client closer to, to your backend when you're using TRPC. So someone will tell you it is a good option if you are having something like it's kind of like a monolith kind of app, but in there you've split the backend and frontend, but it's like a one project, and you're using TRPC to talk to the backend and frontend. All of them you've done using TypeScript for the frontend and the backend. Yeah. So this one is something that is new in the market right now. GraphQL. So one thing that really resulted to creation of GraphQL was the challenge that came about with the flexibility, the REST framework flexibility. Because with REST framework, what happens is and you'll see that what happens is that we have scaling problems with REST-based frameworks, in that if you do backend APIs, so you have your backend APIs here, so and then you have your client, which is your front-end application that is consuming your backend. So every other time you change your backend, when you make any tweaks to the backend, you also have to tweak the front end in a way, and that is that is a challenge. You don't want to be changing your backend every other time you change. You don't want to be changing your front end every other time you're changing your backend, or vice versa. Another problem was overfetching or underfetching of data. Yeah. So you have an API, and an API gives you like let's say 4 pieces of different data. Yeah. So you have name, you have age, and you have location, and you might be having another thing, might be amount. Yeah. So this is one API that gives you all this data. Now in the front end, you might not need all this piece of data. Maybe you just need name and age. Yeah. So you get that you have to do another API that only gives you name and age. So you have to do a different API for that. But we can reuse this, but only by discarding this and only picking what we need. And that's what GraphQL gives you, that kind of flexibility, where you don't have to write so many APIs. Every other time you need you need a section of data that one API gives. You don't have to rewrite another API, which is the case with the REST API. Because this one doesn't give you flexibility. Every other time you call this API, it comes with an overload of data. Or alternatively, it might just be giving you name and age, so it doesn't give you location and amount. So if you have to do that, you have to write another API that can give you name, age, location, and amount. So which is so you see, at first we have an overload of data, and and in the second example we have what we call underfetching, where it's giving you less than what you need at the client side. With GraphQL, you just need to define in between. You need to define what we call schemas, and those schemas. So if the API endpoint is giving us all this data, and our schema only requires 2 of these, so the schema will take care of just 2 and discard the rest. So that's the advantage that comes with GraphQL. But another disadvantage that comes with it is the learning curve. I mean, there's a lot here. It's a heavy framework, so it's good you start with REST, and then once you're familiar with it, you can move to GraphQL. So yeah, it has a lot of things for you to pick. Another thing before I forget is with GraphQL, if you're doing an app that so let's say you have you have this kind of edge devices, for example. And I'm talking of edge devices, I'm talking of devices like it can be your IoT based devices. It can be your fridge, yeah, it can be your camera, and so on and so forth. So these devices are consuming some data from some API, and you understand that bandwidth is of big concern here. So we want to use as little bandwidth as possible with these edge devices. So when these edge devices are consuming REST APIs that maybe come with a lot of data that's not needed, then you realize that at the end of the day you're going to consume a lot of bandwidth, and you don't want that. So you might want to restrict your app. You might want to use GraphQL, which actually just minimizes the use of bandwidth by just giving you the exact piece of data that you need, yeah, from an API, without recreating new APIs. You just use the already existing ones. So in a way, GraphQL and OData work almost in a similar way, because what OData gives you is like an interface of just talking to some APIs at the back, some APIs which come with an overload of data, but then an OData simplifies that to, it gives you like a schema of it enables you to like come up with a schema of the exact, just the little pieces of data that you need across different APIs. In fact, you can query more than one API at a go, instead of just querying one API at a time, like in the case of REST framework. SOAP, as we said, REST uses JSON to to transmit data, maybe to share information. SOAP uses XML. Yeah, so we'll see the difference between those. This one is an JSON based way of sharing data, and this one uses a markup language with a lot of anchor tags and stuff. Yeah, so at first, before we had JSON, we used to have XML. So it's an old form of sharing data between services. And am I forgetting? So generally that's what it is, unless someone has a question. So with the backend, yeah, so if you want faster communication, so I was forgetting TRPC and gRPC. This one use what we call it's called okay, they share information form of binary, but we refer to, even the file is called proto, so it is proto something. Yeah, the form in which data is shared, it's in binary form, not like these two. But then this one is very fast because it shares information form of binary via the transport layer over HTTP version 2, that is. And for you to enable it to work with the browsers, there is some modules you need to install, supporting modules, for it to be able to ensure for that communication between applications that are running on a browser as a client. Yeah. is it protobuf or something? You can check that. I can't remember that right now. Okay, so with a lot of talk there as an introduction, so today we start with the simplest form of an API, and we'll use Flask, which is a Python-based framework. We have different frameworks to do API. We also have, you can use Django by the way if you're using Python, but the simplest one is Flask. If you're a Java developer, which one do you use? Someone?
Maybe Spring.
Pardon?
Spring Boot.
Yeah, Spring Boot.
I mean, use Spring Boot.
Yeah. If you're a .NET dev, I mean C#, you just use .NET. Do you have other frameworks you guys know of?
PHP, Laravel.
Laravel, yeah.
Ruby on Rails.
Yeah, you're saying?
Ruby on Rails.
Yeah, Ruby on Rails. And any other? Okay, so the point I wanted to pass across is once you learn. Today you have so many people. Who is this other guy who wants to join? Danny. Oh. Yeah, the point is once you learn some concepts while you're doing the Flask-based API, you'll realize that those concepts will still apply the same to. They'll still apply to these other frameworks. Yeah, the only difference will be how you call because some of these other frameworks you find that they've done some modules for you, and that in a way simplifies the way you writing. Simplifies the process of you writing the APIs and stuff. But more or less the concept is one and the same across. So you learn it here, you can easily transfer it here. You just need to pick up a new language and then look for the API documentation on that framework, and you're good to go. Yeah. Okay. There's another thing I need to mention. So we have Flask, we'll install that. To test our APIs, we're going to use Postman, but we also have other tools that you can use. You guys know you can use even Visual Studio Code as a way of enabling you to test the APIs. So I don't know what that extension was, but if you just want to test APIs directly from VS Code, you can do that. If someone remembers that name of the extension, you let me know. There was also another one besides Postman that is free. I can't remember the name right now, but if I remember it, I'll show. But we'll go with Postman, which is a common one. Yeah, with that said, and unless someone has a question, I think we should get to writing some simple APIs. Now, another thing we're not going to interact with the database today, but we'll create some schema sometime later, and maybe in the next session, and then now integrate the database. Today we'll just use a simple data structure. We can just use objects, and that will be it. Let me do this. So I hope you'll follow along. Because, what am I doing?
Can you explain what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. I'm creating a directory. I just want to start the project from scratch. So
Okay.
for mkdir to make the directory called Flask API. So I'm creating a directory called Flask API. Then I'll just cd into that. You wanted me to push the code to GitHub so that you can follow along?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me do that. I'll okay. It's okay.
You can do it later. It's okay.
Yeah, I can do it later. Sorry. Yeah, so this the very first thing I'll do is I want to create with Python. Sometimes when you're doing development, you install packages and whatnot, and you don't want to litter the rest of your operating system environment. So you want that to coexist within some virtual environment. So I have to create a virtual environment for this project so that every other package I'll be installing will just coexist within that virtual environment and not litter those into the rest of the operating system, because I don't need that. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and create a virtual environment. So Python m vn, I'll just call it vn virtual env. So and I should create that in here. Let me just confirm. That I created that project here. I can see it. It's crazy. Okay, so I hope you are all there. And another thing I'll create is so with the Flask also, you Flask and Django, I think it's one and the same thing. There's another crucial file we call requirements.txt. So why we need that file is every other package we install, we want to manage all those packages in one place, so that when I'm going to do deployment, or when I'm pulling this project in another machine, I don't want to start installing packages one after the other. When I try to run the code, I realize, okay, I did not install this package, then I have to install before I go on, and so on and so forth. I just want to have all the packages that I have in one place, so that when I'm pulling this project and I want to run it elsewhere, it might even be on deployment server, I just like do an installation of all of them at a go. That will only be possible if I have them in one place. So I'll call this file it's called requirements.txt. Yeah. So this one will store all our dependencies for the project. It's like in Node.js it's like which file, now that most of you are familiar with that.
Is it packet.json?
Yeah, packet.json. You're right. So let me change this theme because it looks quite hope that doesn't harass your eyes, the light. Okay, so the first one will be, we'll need Flask, right? So we need to install Flask, and I think we'll just, at the moment, we'll just go with Flask. So I doubt if there is any other thing we need at the moment. So you can directly install pip install Flask, and then the rest of the things will just get that from Flask. So you can just populate it here. So I just need Flask, so I can save that, and then I can so first of all, I need to activate the virtual environment, because so to activate that in Windows, if you're running Linux, you can do something like so if I had git bash here, you just use the source command, source venv bin. But since this is Windows, you go to scripts, activate. If it is Linux, it's source venv bin activate. Yeah. In Windows, so if you're using bash script, but if you're using PowerShell, then you just have to start with the venv okay, you start with venv/scripts activate on your PowerShell, so you can find that. Okay, so I need to install the packages, so it will be pip install requirements recursively if you have more than one package, because right now I only have one. So if you wanted to read through all the packages, so recursively requirements.txt, and that should install all the packages. Maybe I forgot, if you did not install pip, you also need that, because that's our package manager. Okay, so it's installing Flask. Okay, so there we go, we have Flask installed. So if you just want to test if it is working, you can start a Python interpreter, and then you can just say import Flask to see if it is yeah, to see if actually it was installed. But you can see it was installed, so that is okay. Great, so we have Flask installed, and in case in future you do pip install of any other package, after that you can just do pip freeze to ensure that that package is added to the requirements.txt. Pip freeze to add everything to requirements.txt. Okay, so briefly I can just go to the Flask website more, because sometimes it is good you go through the documentation, right? So this is the documentation for Flask, and our focus, the thing is, you can use Flask to do a monolith kind of application. You can do front end and back end as one app using Flask, but in this case that's not our concern today. We just want to we want to use it exclusively to do APIs. The same thing with Django. You can use Django to do a monolith kind of application where you've bundled the front end and back end together, and it has all the tools for you to do that. But then you can also use Django framework just for API. Yeah, so in this case I just want for API, and I can that is is something else. Okay, so I think we have something for Flask just for API. It's called Flask REST Framework. Yeah, Flask REST Framework API should be this one. Yes, so this is it. Yeah, Flask REST API, because we are writing REST APIs. So yeah, so you need to import JSON, but also Flask itself comes with what we call JSONify, which you can still use to return data as JSON and whatnot. Yeah, and then okay. Yeah, so as we looked before when I was introducing this course, I said with the REST framework, you return data as JSON. And this is an example of JSON. So you can use JSONify to change your data into JSON format and send it. And Flask comes with JSONify, or you can import JSON. Yeah, but it's not that necessary. If you have JSONify, you can still do the same. And another thing with your Postman, just ensure that you've switched your Postman to return data, to interact with data in form of JSON, because it can display data in form of HTML, XML, and so on and so forth. So the application data content type will be in form of JSON. Another thing to take into consideration that you will come across most of the time is the requests that you'll be sending. So you need to know some of the request methods, and these are just like the ones you should know. And another thing is the codes associated with the request, right? So so we have the get. If you want to get a resource from the backend, for example, or from the server, use a get. You want to fetch the list of users that have registered, you use a get request method. You'll send a get request. Yeah, if you are trying to create a resource, let's say you are registering as a user and you are creating a resource in the backend, so the method that you'll use is the post method, HTTP method. So you'll send a post request. When you send a post request, the backend will understand, okay, this person is trying to create a resource, a new resource in the backend. If you want to make a change, but then you are changing every field of whatever resource you are trying to alter in the backend, use a put request. If you are deleting, that means eliminating existing resource in the backend, use a delete method. And if you are doing, if you want to change only a section of an existing resource, if the resource had the name, age, amount, but you want to retain the rest of the bits of data, you want to retain them to ensure that they remain intact, but only change the name within that resource, what you do is use the patch HTTP method. And of course you have the head and the rest of the other. There are so many, by the way. If you check Mozilla HTTP status codes, that's where I normally go, but you can MDN, you might have other resources for the same, but wait a minute. Yeah. So we have connect, we have delete, but the ones we mentioned, the ones you just mentioned and talked about, those are the ones you'll be using most of the times when you're doing the APIs. Most of the times you'll not be using connect, but delete you'll be using it more often. Even get, head you'll rarely use it, options, you'll use it most of the times. Patch, post, put, you'll rarely use stress, but maybe a time will come when you need to use that. Yeah. And then another thing that maybe wasn't mentioned there, we have what we call HTTP status codes, and these ones you need to know them. Like you need to associate a response with the correct status code. Yeah. So if you are doing a post request, and we'll be doing those with you, if the post request is successful, then part of your status code when you're returning the object, JSON object, to part of the data that will be the status code. So if it was if the request was successful, then it is 200, which just says everything is okay. Yeah. Otherwise, if the request wasn't, if it was a resource that you're creating, you're doing a post request and it was successful and the resource has been created successfully in the backend, that means a user who was trying to register has been successfully registered, then that means you return a 201 because you're creating some resource. Yeah, it's not just an okay. Yeah. If it will be a 200 okay if you're just sending something which actually successfully if you're doing a get, maybe you're pulling data from the backend, right? And then you successfully pull the data and you're able to view the data, then the status that you'll get for that response is a 200. It's just an okay. There's no resource you created, but if you're creating a resource, you don't do 200, you do 201. Yeah. So I hope you see the difference here. So in short, anything within the range of 200, that means it's an okay, it's a success. Yeah, it's a success, not even an okay. An okay is if you're breaking it down now into the exact meaning of 200, 201, and 202. And then 202 is accepted. Maybe you are trying to log in, you are sending your username and your password, and the backend accepts that as okay, then maybe accepted, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so 204, no content, reset content, and so on and so forth. So this requests have been successful, but there's no content. You get a 204. 205, your request was successful, but you need to reset your content, and so on and so forth. But anything within the range of 200 is a success. Okay. So you need to know these bits and use the correct response code. And then we have 300, which in most cases we say it's for redirect. Yeah. So you access a site, but then you are redirected to another. You are trying to access a certain resource, but you are redirected to another resource, or something of the sort. You can see 300 is moved permanently. That resource has been moved permanently. 300 gives you multiple choices to a number of resources, and then 302 found, and so on and so forth. But anyway, generally anything within the range of 300 means that the resource has been moved. Yeah, you're being redirected to another alternative resource, not the exact one that you're looking for. 400, generally anything within the range of 400 means it's a failure. So you most of you know 404, which means that resource you're looking for doesn't exist or can't be found. So you get a 404, not found. If you get a 43, then that means you've been rejected. Yeah. So let's say you're trying to access a resource that you don't have a permission to access. Yeah, you don't have the rights to access. You need to return the right response code, which is like 43. You've been forbidden from accessing that resource. 42, if you're handling payment-based requests, so you're trying to access a request, but it seems like you haven't done the payments. You need to do payments before you access that resource. So you send a 402, payment required. You need to pay first before you access a resource. So you see, at the end of the day, this response codes, they boil down to specific response messages. Yeah, if you want to tell someone that you are unauthorized from accessing a certain resource, then you use 401. You just don't use 400 blankly for everything. Yeah, and that's what sets you apart from the rest of the backend dev, because some don't pay attention to some of these, and that might include me sometimes. I'm too tired to go and check exactly what this means, but you want to be very thorough, and so on and so forth. So that's within the range of 400. You can see there's quite a long. You can take time and read because this documentation is quite clear, and that's why I actually pointed you to MDN. I like their documentation of the HTTP response methods. And then we have 500. Anything within the range of 500 means there is something wrong with the server or the way the application is being served, right? So if you get 500, it means that you have an internal server error. There's a problem with the server that needs to be resolved, and most of the times you might be redirected to some page that asks you to contact the admin and so on and so forth. If it's 541 not implemented, if it's 542, then that means it's a bad gateway. You need to be redirected to the correct gateway to access your resource, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so I think it starts from anything within the range of 100. That is 100 is informational, right? It's not here. Oh, we have 100. It's supposed to be 100 that has to do with information. Like 100 itself is continue, I don't know, switching protocol and so on. But anything within the range of 100 generally is informational kind of content. Yeah. All right. So it's 100 to 500. Yeah, and then we look at CORS, cross origin resource, but then we'll see that later on. Okay, so up to that point, do you have any question before we? So you need to know those methods, because each API has to either be can be a post, a get, yeah, a put, and so on and so forth. And you'll see that in a while. So we'll start by importing some. So we'll create our first. We call it. You can call this one a backend. I can just call it backend API. And we write some simple APIs to begin with. So I will. Let me import. So what do you want us to do? To write a backend on what? The blogs, because that is going to be part of our. So we have. Yes.
Let's do blog post.
Blog post, correct. So we can document it down here first, because before we begin, so that we can be focused. Otherwise, I'll keep jumping left, right, and center. So now we have what you call endpoints, and what an endpoint is actually when you hit a particular API. An endpoint is just like a URL that helps you to talk to that API. Yeah, so it's just a URL, and you pass in some information. You know, I don't want to make assumptions. Some of you might be very green in terms of this thing. Postman open API.
Sebastian.
Yeah.
Oh, what's the blog post? Oh, is that the React thing you did?
Yeah, the one we are doing. Oh, you missed that class.
I wasn't in that company.
Okay, don't worry. Examples of. So I can go with market API. So okay. So these ones don't need any authentication. So the thing is, when you are handling these APIs, you can use the browser to test the API. You can use VS Code, or you can use Postman, or there's another tool called Insomnia. I did not mention that. I told you you can use Insomnia, or you can use your terminal and use what we call curl, right? Yeah, or you can use VS Code. There's an extension, I can't remember right now, but let me just check it. I should be giving you all of these tools if you need. REST client. No, really. Just a minute.
I think it had another name, something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not REST.
Yeah, but should be this one. Should be REST client, I think so. Yeah, it is this one.
Then maybe there's another one there. I don't know.
Yeah, we have a number of those, I think, but I'll go with REST, so you can install that and just test your APIs on, so you don't have to be shifting from VS Code to Postman every other time. If you just want to to have one place where you are working from, so you write your APIs from VS Code and you're testing your APIs right there, instead of switching every other time to Postman. Maybe you don't have 2-3 screens like some of us, so you only have one PC, and switching every other time is a waste of time for you. Yeah, so it was REST client, I think so. So you can go and see, but it's so easy to use. We'll see.
Sebastian,
Yeah.
I also think Postman has an extension.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
Let me see. This is where now people come up with ideas. Thunder client. I was forgetting that.
Yeah, it's that one I was talking about.
Yeah, Thunder client. This one. You can also install this one. And they more or less work in the same way. So yeah, Thunder client is cool. I've used it. So Salim was talking of some extension for Postman here. So which one is it? Is it the first one?
Yeah, it's just the same as Thunder Client. So Thunder Client but I feel like Thunder Client is better.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try this one out. Let me just install it, but I'll try it sometime later.
Let's just use Thunder.
Yeah. Well, so those are some of the tools that you might need. Okay, so you need to import Flask first of all. So we'll say from you can just say import Flask, but I want to import a number of things from Flask, so I can say from Flask import Flask. Take care of the capital letter because it is Flask with capital. The module itself is the package is Flask, and this other one is Flask. So I don't know why this one is complaining, but unused, it's okay. So I'm importing Flask, and because we will be returning data in form of JSON, I can say I'll also import JSON file, which is part of the Flask package. Correct. So at this point here, we will just be importing stuff. Import packages, and then I also need to for me to start using the Flask app, I need to instantiate it. So I'll create I call it instantiate, whatever it is. So I'll create an object called sorry, let me just pick this one. Yeah, so I'll create an object called app, but you can call it anything. Later on you'll see why. So I'll call Flask, and yeah, so passing the Dunder name. Okay, so that way I can now be able to start. So there's what we call a factory, a factory what? Is it a factory method, which is not necessary, but I think we need that. So there is this thing. I don't know if anyone of you can explain what it is. So I say if name is equal. So this one enables us to run this file as a script. Yeah. So in Python, whenever you see this line of code, it just tells you that, hey, whenever I run this file, run it as a script. Yeah. So some sort of factory something, I can't remember right now. But basically, when you add it down here, and we will call our app object. So app.run. We want to. That's how you run the Flask app. So once you have this, you call our object.run. It will run our Flask application. That's anything that is there. So you can see it's not difficult to set up a Flask server. Once you have this in place, like your Flask server will be up and running. But then we also want to ensure that we are able to debug, because we are doing development. If we get any errors within our Flask, when the application is being served, we want to be able to make sense out of that. So we need to enable debug mode. So you just pass it in here. We say debug is equals to true. Yeah. But you don't do this in production. You have to disable this, because it will be giving clients errors that they don't need to see. Okay, so you have that, and we want to write a very simple API right here. So our first hello world API, I'll call it that. And I can just give it a name. So first of all, you need to define the route for that API. What's a route? It's like a path that someone, once this server is running, if you have a domain name, you've hosted it in form of a domain name called hello world. So if you want someone to access the homepage, then you need to give a route to that API called homepage. Yeah. So yeah. So the first thing we call so there is this. What's happening with my keyboard today? Okay. So for us to define the route, we use a decorator. So this, anything you see starting with an at, that is a decorator. So we call it app. But if you had named your application differently here, of course you'll also change the name here. So at app.route. So first route will be just an index. Yeah. Most of the times we just leave it like that. So this one becomes our home page, or an index route in most programming languages. So you define that function. We can call it home or index, whatever. So I'll call it home, and then I'm not passing in anything because it's not picking anything, and it will just return an empty page with some, okay, it can just say hello world. So we'll just return hello world. But then we are not returning a string. We're not returning JSON as such. We're just returning a string, which is not what we want with APIs. But for a start, it's not bad. So yeah, we just want to test to ensure that our Flask application actually works. So I'll run this one. Where is that terminal again? Okay. So to run this, you just say Flask run. Okay, for as long as this file is in there, it should be able to make sense of that. Let me see. okay, I need to set up Flask app is equals to whatever, but I don't have time to set up the environment variables. I can still run it just by calling Python backend.py, and that should be able to run the Flask app. So you can run it in different ways. But if you set up the environment variable for Flask app and whatnot, you can just use Flask app or Flask run, whatever. Yeah. So you can see it is running. So the next thing we want to do is to access this. You can hold down control and you click. Should direct us to the home page. If I go there, you can see hello world, and that is our page running on port 5000, right? So this port number, we can always change it. If you want to use a different port, you can just define that here. You can say port is equals to, and then you can give it a different port. So you can see our application block. So you can say I want it to run on port 8000 or 9000, whatever. So once you have that in place, next time you run it, it will run on a different port. It's good to set to so you can see it's now running on port 9000, and that's important because you might be having different Flask applications as services. You might be having two different backends, one running maybe payment service, another one running some orders and whatnot service, and all of them are Flask based. So you have like different services. Yeah, so it's good to know how to assign different ports. So if I go there, you'll see this one's now running on port 9000, which means the change was effected. Yeah, so but for now I'll stick with 5000. Okay.
Question.
Yes.
Can you run, let's say, like in the same application, part of the content in one port, the other content in other port?
Can I run what in one port and another?
Yeah, like can you use different ports for different part of the same application?
No. So the same application, if it's this application, we consider it as a service, so it will just use one port. You can't run it using different ports unless you are creating another service here, a Flask based application again within.
Yeah, that's
And
what.
yeah, so you can give it a different port, and then that means that you have some sort of microservices, and you
Yeah.
might want to manage them using maybe something like Docker, so that you can run them at a go. Yeah,
Okay.
otherwise it will
Thank you.
be a lot of work for you to start running this one again, going, you open another terminal, you run that one. It will be a lot of work. Why not just condense them into one place where you can use like you can containerize them, and then now you run that file, Docker file, and then it will start each one of them with different port numbers.
Okay.
So
Thank
this is
you.
our simple API. You can see it's working fine, but there's one thing. If we go to Postman right now, and okay, so yeah, so with Postman, you see we have different services. We have the Google remote procedure call we just talked about. We have GraphQL, we mentioned that, and we have Socket.io and so on and so forth. Socket.io if you're doing a chat-based application, and yeah, with WebSockets and so on and so forth. But ours is an API, an HTTP REST API. We also have MQTT. Why do you use MQTT? You have any idea? It's a messaging protocol also widely used in Internet of Things, IoT based. So you want them to communicate to each other and whatnot. We use MQTT. It's a protocol for also. So in this case, ours is HTTP based. So here we go, and I just want to call that API. So we'll not be using the browser. Although if you want, you can use the browser, right? So I'll go with this one. So if I go back here, now you can see how it's wasting my time switching from one to another. And I don't know, let me see. Yeah, it's running. So if I do a get, I get hello world. But so it's not in form of JSON. This one is in HTML, right? But if our data was in form of JSON, then we have to change this one from HTML to JSON. If it was a SOAP based API, we have to change to XML, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so that is it. So automatically this one was a HTML based response. It wasn't in JSON form. But what if you wanted it to be in JSON form? Yeah, so let's say we have so I'll define another route, a very simple API again. So I can say, let's say we are getting a list of blogs. Yeah, so I'll call this one blogs. So first of all, I'll start with the at app. Don't forget that, because this one is another route. So in our documentation here, let's be orderly. So we are handling blogs. What might you want when you are handling the blogs on the front end side? As a front end engineer, what kind of data might you need from the back end? I need suggestions from you. You have any ideas?
For a blog, I think you can check who sent the message. I mean, who posted it. Maybe who commented it, and at what time was it created.
And also you need the blog itself, right?
Yeah, and the updated time too.
The time it was created.
Updated.
What time updated?
The likes, we can add the likes.
We can add the what?
Likes.
Okay,
Who liked?
Okay. Yeah. So the name of the author. A blog also has a title, right?
Yeah.
There is title and there is the body, which is the blog text and the title, and then the likes, the time. Yeah. So these are different components that come with the blog. So we first of all, if we are pulling the resource, we'll use the get response method. But then when you are creating this resource, when you're creating a blog for the first time, we'll use a post, right? If you want to update, so we'll have different methods. Since we're doing REST API, you find that you have to define so there are different ways of handling this. It depends with the Flask REST API framework you're using. There's a framework that you can do all this in one. So you use class-based methods, but we're not going to use that. If you're using a class-based approach, you can define get, post, put. Maybe I'll do that later on so that you can have a flavor of both. Delete, yeah, all in terms of one class. So it's one API with subsections of the API within, yeah, collectively. But then let's make it simple. So we'll not go with that. We'll just go with functional based, and that means you're going to define a function for each one. You're going to define a function for get, for post, for put, for delete. Yeah, which seems like a lot of work, but I mean, we just have to go with that. So we'll go with the simpler approach. So we have this data points, name, common, created, blog, start time, likes, and so on and so forth. So the first thing we want to do maybe is let's assume the simplest to do is to get. So but let's first assume that we have some sort of blog. Yeah, so we can have a blog somewhere here. So this is like our database, which is, let's make it simple, it's a list, and then within this list we have objects, a list of objects, which each object is like a blog. Yeah, so we can have our first object here, which will have, so when you're storing stuff in the database, each is identified by some sort of ID, and so we also have to create an ID for our blog. So this is our first blog with ID of number 1, and then the blog will also come with the title, and our title will be, so we are creating anything random. So
Maybe first blog, I don't know.
yeah, first blog, and then it has some
Content maybe.
yeah, content, and you can just put in some random stuff. And then we also have, what else did we have this side? Well, we might not pick everything for now, so let's just pick the title, name, and the author, right? The rest we can leave that. So you can have the author right here, and we can have let's say Rashid is the author there. Yeah, so we have these, and you can add some more, 2 or 3. And collapse these. What am I doing here? So my mouse has refused to work today. So just change this one. So this is our simple database. So this one you can say is our second, and this one you can say is our third blog. Content doesn't really matter. So author can say yeah. Okay, so that is our simple blog. So the next thing, what do we do next? So we want to just get data. Yeah, so we can define, and so this can give it any name. We can say get blog, but we're just getting like one blog. And then we'll return some, we'll return some form of data. Yeah, so I don't know, we'll return it as a list or whatever it is, but then that's not all. So we need to process that. So how do you go about that? Yeah. So one thing that so you need to be very you need to give your functions your functions the correct name. Like in this case it's get, so get blogs, or get, let's just say get blogs. You're getting everything, we're not getting one. So if so we just want to like return everything. So in this case we are going to return everything here. We're going to return the whole blog. So you can call these blogs. So if we say get blogs, we'll use JSONify. We had JSONify imported right here. So we're going to JSONify everything here, convert it into some sort of JSON object. That's what JSONify does. So we'll say return JSONify, and then we pass in our blogs simply. So, but then another thing we are missing here is we said app.route. We've not defined the exact route for this API. So how do you go about it? So here it was just an index page, right? But here we want to return, we want to redirect someone to the correct resource. So we can say /blogs. Yeah. So that if you are on the browser, you can say /blogs. Okay, someone's having internet issues. Yeah, I'll share the code. Yeah, so if I go to Postman and I pass in the I use our URL /blogs, I should be able to get these blogs. Yeah, so that is one thing. So can we test this? This one is complaining because I don't have
Do we need to add the method type, or it's just get it's automatic?
we are getting there. So the get method by default what you have is the get method, and by the way, initially the get method could also do post and also get, right? Initially it could fetch resource and it could also create resource. You can use it to create resource, but it's not a good way because it's not safe. So for you to create a resource in a manner that is secure, that no one can be able to see through what you're trying to resource that you're trying to create, then you use post for that. Yes, that's a good question. Now this one is because yes,
the get also I had like it can't carry like a large data. You can't like use get if you are
get a list of blogs. So another thing that I insist when you're doing your APIs, ensure you document them. This one helps someone who is going to maintain your API after you, or even yourself. In future, you might forget everything you are doing. It happens most of the times. Not everyone remembers everything they did. Once you're done writing that code, that is it. So in future, your API might break because of 1 or 2, 3 things. So you might need to go back, and the best place is to ensure that you have the doc strings. This is our way of documenting your API. If you're using Swagger, you'll realize that this documentation is not in vain. Swagger will also use that documentation on the front end to help the person who is consuming your APIs. So this one's just like a hello world. So I'm using some simple examples here, but you might give the kind of parameters that your function is needs. You can define it there and so on and so forth, but we'll get to that at advanced levels of this. It's just a good thing for you to do. Okay, so we'll now run this and see what it does. Now we added JSONify. Now we should be able to return data in form of JSON. So if we go to Postman and we say it was blogs, and it ensure the response type here is the method here is a correct one, so it's a get method and not a post. It's a get request. Yeah. So if we okay, so that doesn't exist. Does it mean we called the wrong one? So okay, it was 5,000. We changed. We need to change this one. Our service doesn't run on 9,000.
I think it is the blogs.
Not really.
Or?
It's the port number. So,
okay.
Yeah. Okay. So we send that. We are getting back our JSON. You can see. So we're getting back all our blogs. Oops. Yeah, so you can see we're getting all our blogs. So we're getting the author, the content, the ID, and so on and so forth. So we have everything here. So for the front-end guy, so the front-end person just needs to call this API, gets the data, and then uses the data as they wish to display it on the front end. So there's a way to consume this, and I'm sure someone like Salim is warming up to show you how to consume this. And that was our simple backend API, as you can see. Now there are a number of things you must be wondering now. There's something I missed out, and that was on the request methods, right? So so there is so let's say we want to create to get one book, right? We don't want to get so many books, we just want to get one book alone. So how do we go about it? We just want to get ID number 1. Yeah, so I'll go and define that API here. So I'll say I'll just reuse, okay, I don't type everything.
Maybe we use a for loop or something.
Do slice in the ID.
Exactly. So get blog. So I'm only getting one blog, but then I'm still hitting the blog route. So I can even call these blogs because you're getting a number of blogs instead of just one blog. That's good. So get blogs / blogs, and then here I'm getting one blog, so I'll still hit the blogs route, or I can still leave it as blog, but I just want it to everything to be under blogs, but I just want one blog, right? So that is the route, but this route is not complete. We need to pass in some sort of integer. What integer ID? You want to get a blog of which ID? So I need blog of ID number 1, number 2, number what, yeah. So since we want to make it flexible so that someone can pass in whatever ID they wish to collect, we just define it. So we'll add here int. So that means whatever you're passing, the int, the ID has to be in form of an integer. We don't accept a string for that matter. And then of course, how did we define our IDs here? So this one is, we just defined it as ID, so you can just like int ID or book ID, yeah, book ID or blog ID, yeah, or I can just leave it as ID, it doesn't matter. So whatever you pass in here, that's a placeholder for whatever it is. Yeah, so that is it. And so what is the method here? The method is still get, right? So we can also add a method here. Oops. So our method is method is equals to, so this one you can pass in more than one method because an API can handle both post and get, but in this case ours is just a get, yeah. And remember that by default is get, so most of the times I might decide not to add method here. If it's a get, I might just leave it empty, but it's good to be explicit. So I'll say this method is a get method. I don't know why it is complaining, but okay, yeah, that should be fine. So even the rest of the APIs, just for informative reason, even this one is supposed to be a get, even this one is a get, so yeah, so it's good to be, yeah, but you've seen it can work without, so the default is get, but in this case it's good to always have that in place, to be very explicit that it's a get method. Everyone should know it is. Okay, so once someone passes in the book ID, we want to use that to search for the exact ID. So that means this function also, we need to pass in that blog ID that has been passed. Yeah, so we'll have that as part of our parameter. And so get a, okay, get a blog. And then down here you can say at params, so you can define whatever parameters you have, right? So we have blog ID, you can tell us what that is, for example, yeah, and so on and so forth. So that's just the documentation. This one is not so good over documentation, but I'll show you a very nice documentation here that when you plug in a tool like Swagger, it is able to understand everything you are doing. But anyway, I just left it at as simple as it is. So in this case, that means we need to look to iterate through this list of books or objects within the list of blogs and get the exact ID. Yeah. So now your Python skills come into play. So we have we are looking for a blog. Now I'm confusing blog with book here every other time. So you can say blog is equals to, so I'll use what you call you can use list comprehension. You want to make it so as easy as possible, but anyway,
How about just a for loop?
Yeah, we can still use a for loop. So let's use what most people will understand. I wanted to use what we call a generator and a next function. Python has got an inbuilt function called next. So you can combine it with a generator way of iterating through the list of objects and stuff. And that's
You can show.
one.
You can show us that.
Yeah.
Just show us that. Then show us that.
Yeah. For most people who are not so good with Python, they might struggle a little bit, but there's this next method, and inside it I'll use a generator expression, so which looks like a list comprehension of some sort. Yeah. Then you have to put it. So we're looking for an item or a blog, an item for, let's say for item, in blogs. If the item ID, so that ID that you're looking for in this case, if the item ID is equal to the blog ID. If it doesn't exist, we just want to return none, right? Yeah. Okay, it was just complaining, so I was wondering what's happening. So another thing, so we want also to return the correct response code if the book doesn't exist, right? So we have to check. So we'll say if blog not book, if blog is none, we want to return some response. So we can say so there's also a method called abort with the Flask, so we can just like abort. Yeah, but we need to import that, so you can abort with 404, so it will return a 404 where, so I think we need to also import abort so that you can use it. Yeah. Here you go. So just if the block doesn't exist, if that ID you're looking for doesn't exist, we return 404, which means the resource is not found. Yeah. Otherwise, we want to return the blog itself, right? So here we return JSONify, but then we return so we need to JSONify this. Yeah. So we can say return JSONify, and we want to return it in form of you can return it as in form of a list or an object, whichever, it's up to you. So I can return a list that's been JSONified, or you can just return an object, and this object will have you can say blog. Hey, what is going on? So that's our blog right there, and what we want to return in that place is that blog. Yeah, and I think that should take care of that. So that is it. We can test this. And there's one thing I haven't returned, because here we are returning a 404. We can also return a status code here, but we'll get to that because yeah. So this API is on a route, so we want to get API blogs, the first book, the first blog, really. So that was blogs. Yeah, blogs, and then you can the first, the second, whatever. Yeah, but so it's a get. That's correct. So blogs, we want to get only the first first blog. Yeah, so here we are. So we only get the blog with the first ID. So in that, if you go back to our code, you see that the first ID was Rashid, and that's exactly what we get. So if we send another get request now, maybe for the second author's blog, we get that is our second blog, and so on and so forth. So that's a get. Yeah. Okay. So are you getting it? Do you have any question up to that point?
And I'm getting an error.
What error are you getting?
There is the mapping is overwriting an existing endpoint.
Just give me a sec. Are you not listening to some other stuff? Okay. Let me stop sharing. You can just share that with me and then we see. You can share your screen. And be quick because we want to proceed. We want to do a post and then if time will allow us to do even a delete.
Now you can see it.
Yeah.
Okay, now this is what I'm getting.
It's not so clear on my side, but what's the error, or if you can increase the size? Okay. Assertion error. View function mapping is overwriting an existing endpoint function. Get blog. Let me look at your endpoints. So you have blogs. Can you just have like okay? The problem is, you see the first route is get blog, and then the second route, when you're defining it, you're using get blog. You can't use the same. You need to give it a unique name. So the first one you're getting blogs, that's correct, and the second one you're just getting a blog. So if you have same function names, you will get that error. So you have to give a function name based on exactly what you're trying to do, which should be different from these other ones. Okay, that's good. Try and run it again. It should be able to work.
Yeah, it's working.
You can go and hit the endpoint with the, you can view it on the browser or whatever, and you see. Okay. So what happens if you need also to test your APIs extensively? So what happens if we supply an ID that doesn't exist? So I'm looking for an ID of an 8th ID. We only have 3 records, but then I'm looking for the 8th record which doesn't exist. What happens in that case? I should be able to get a 404. So you can see 404 not found. Yeah. Now this is not what we would want on the front end. We don't want to get a HTML. We want to get some sort of
You're not sharing, Sebastian.
Oh, sorry. So fond of that. The person who is listening to news, can you mute?
Mandamano vibes.
Yeah, in serious class. But are you able to see my screen clearly, or it is I need to increase the font?
You can see
We can see it. You can see it.
Yeah.
Oh, hey,
That's-
Brandon shared his screen and I couldn't see anything. Now I'm blind, literally. So. Yeah. Yeah, so instead of returning a HTML, maybe we would want to return some form of JSON, so for now we're just making this look simple, but that's not maybe what we'd want to do most of times. So you can also return JSON file and we can return some form of object with a message. But then you can also define these messages, error messages, somewhere else, right? So there's a way you can have those. So we just want to return and say page not found, something of some. So the thing is, the idea is we want to return a message that is user friendly to understand. We don't want to return a whole HTML page with a lot of stuff. We just want to return one message. So in this case, we say resource not found. Okay. and of course you can add additional stuff. You can add like status, yeah, for the guy who is handling the front end also. So status, and you can, so there is a someone wants to join or is leaving, I don't know, or it's a question. Oh, it's leaving for class. Yeah, if you have a class, you can leave. I think I should end it in a few. So I'm just doing the last API, or let's do the post API next time, and the delete and the put and the patch, right? So once we are done with those, you simply have like everything, and then now what we'll do next is we'll connect it. We'll create some sort of a database. We'll come up with the design of the database. We'll do a schema, and then later on, instead of saving everything onto working with the object, we now start working with the database. That means we have to configure the driver and everything, and now we start pushing data and pulling data from the database. I think that will be okay. So Haymanot, you can feel free to leave. I'm just going to end this here because it's already 7 as you can see, and I know we've covered quite a lot. So I was saying, at this point where you have status, you can return the status code. So at this point we don't have that, but I think we also need to, from Flask, we need to import something like was it response? Let me see if we have status. Should be response.status, I think so, if I've not forgotten. Yeah, response.status. So but what status do you want to like return, right? So is it like a 404 or what? Yeah, so something of the sort. So let me see if that works. Okay, there's something I am missing here. I don't know what exactly that is, but let me test it. The error went again. Being oversensitive for nothing. So if that works fine, so I should be able to get a JSON form of wait. Okay, this one gave us something else. Just give me a sec here.
It's HTML that you're using the Postman.
It is what?
You're using HTML in the Postman.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. It's supposed to use JSON. Let's try this. But still, that's not okay. So this was a get. It's a get. We're trying to get a resource, but that resource doesn't exist. So the thing is, just give me a sec. It's not that even. It's with a get, it should just work. Flask. Yeah, I just need to pass a comma and then whatever it is. I went into a lot of hassles for nothing. So JSONify. Okay. Okay, so you have to do away with a lot of this.
The status.
Yeah, but you could as well. There's a way you can just use status also with that, but that's I think in should be in yeah. With this this one should work fine. That one should not JS or something. I think so. Let's get back here and see now. Yeah, resource not found, and if we look at the status code, it's 404. Yep. And so this one takes us back to, you remember when you're looking at the status code, so you have to get the exact status code for that intermarries with the message that you're trying to relay. So in this case, we are trying to tell the user that the resource is not found. So the exact status code for that is not 400. 400 is general. So that the exact one is 404. And you saw the other bits. So you need, feel free to always go back and refer to that to get the exact response code for whatever message you're trying to relay. Yeah. So I think with that we can stop here for today. At least you have an idea of, so we've written some APIs, as you can see. This one is for hello world, which doesn't really return JSON. It should return a JSON. Maybe what you can do here is we can just like pass in the name, ask the user for the name, and then hello world, so and so. But anyway, this one is just to test the application, so this one is not important. And then now the rest of the APIs, now they're important because now we are assuming this blogs is our database, so we are pulling data, so we are getting all blogs, for example, and here we are getting only one blog with a particular ID. And then maybe tomorrow we can go ahead and we can create a blog. We can see how can we add a blog to the list of blogs here, and how can we delete, how can we edit, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so once we have all those, you are free to continue in future. You're good to write APIs, but then there are few 2-3 things we'll add on the way as we make our APIs more and more complex, and we add some other things that ensure that you follow good practice and whatnot. Okay, so that is it. I think it's good enough for an introduction, unless there's a question from the rest of the team. All right, thank you too. Okay, can call it a day.
I do have one.
Yeah, you like putting me on the cross with questions. It's okay, bring it on.
Like, let me just share my screen.
Okay.
Wait.
What about the rest of the guys? You can see today we had, by the way, today an online session, and we have a full team from the beginning to the end, apart from a few people like Esther who got internet issues, or she's still here. And
You can see my screen, eh?
Emmanuel went to class. Yeah, I can see your screen. So
okay, when I get the blogs here,
Esther is there.
from this function here, I get the list of the blogs, and from this URL here,
What
which
are
is
you
an
using
integer.
the browser?
Yes.
Test. Okay. Try to next time. I don't want to see you using the browser. You can use the Postman or one of those tools we mentioned. But anyway, don't worry. I'll pardon you for today.
Okay, just allow me for today.
Yeah.
Then when I try to get the block number 1, I cannot get it.
Was it get blog or blogs? Let me see how you define that. Increase the size of your window. The route is blogs or blog. It is blogs, and then you pass in the ID.
Yeah, blogs and then the ID.
Yeah. So when you go there, you have
On top or
blogs. When you do /blogs, you get everything, right?
yeah, and this blogs I get everything.
Okay. Item ID is equals to. Okay, I see where the issue is. We'll just go back to your code where you're doing the.
Here,
Where we have the generator expression, yeah.
this one.
Okay, so everything was ID there, and tempo item in blogs. Scroll back to hapo juu kidogo nione. It's blog. Okay. item ID equals to ID. Now you see when you call a bot is like a return.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then it just gives you a HTML. We wanted some flexibility, so I decided not to use a bot. So I decided to give a JSON-based object. So you can remove the bot.
Okay.
Just return a JSON message, blog not found 404. So you can save it and rerun it. Let's see what you get.
Still running.
Are you running your app?
Yeah, it's running. It is.
Okay, so when you go back, try blogs, let's see. Okay. That's blogs, you get everything. Now go blogs/1. What does it give you? It says, I can't read that.
Let me zoom.
Sebastian, can the rest of us leave now?
Yeah, you guys can leave. Thank you for showing up and surviving from the beginning to the end. Can go and enjoy, can go and be with your loved ones. That's what one of my lecturers tell me. See you. Let's see what this guy has. Local variable blog reference before. Let me see. Before assignment. Can you go back to your code?
It is.
So the thing is, if I look at your code,
Yeah, you can see it. Just.
So can you give that variable of yours a different name? Say
Which one?
So the one that blog one, yeah, that one. So you say next item for item in blog. Okay, I can try to run that, you see.
I get all the blogs.
You're getting all the blogs.
Yeah.
Even on the first one.
Yeah. I think it's yeah. Ah, great.
Yeah, it's working. Yeah, it's it's a variable thing. Okay. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, see you guys. I can call it a day.